We're Laura and Cindy, and you're listening to the Holistic Horsemanship and Husbandry podcast, where we talk about natural horsekeeping and deepening your connection with your horse. I'm Laura, your horse care mentor. I teach natural horse management practices after working with over 200 horses and seeing how current industry standards are compromising the health of the horse.
And I'm Cindy, your horsemanship mentor, offering a proven and unique approach to creating deep connections with your horses from 20 plus years of experience, including working with wild Mustangs. If you enjoy this conversation, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to us so we can get this podcast into the ears of more passionate horse people.
Today, we are talking about managing your expectations and setting yourself up for success when you bring a new horse into your life. A lot of people are so excited to bring a new horse into their life, and you should be. I personally cannot stand the transitional period of changing a horse's life and bringing it from someone else's world and care into mine because of how much uncertainty there is and room for error there is. I'm much more, after 6 months when everybody gets to know each other and it's calmed down, that's when I really get into my groove and start enjoying new horse ownership. But I think a lot of people don't know what they don't know. And they have these expectations that it's going to be just magical and fun because you just spent probably a lot of money. So why wouldn't it be magical and fun? But we have to hold space and understanding for the being that we are changing everything about their world. And sometimes that's hard on them, and that's okay. And the amount that we pay for them does not play into that equation at all.
I agree. I actually personally enjoy bringing a new horse into our herd. Let me back up a little bit. I do agree with Laura on pretty much everything she said. Although she kind of has the dread where I don't, but what makes Laura and I so amazing and powerful together is that we share so much of the same philosophies and passions. And yet we're still, we have different worlds because I, for the past 20 years, 20 plus, have lived with my horses. And Laura has the boarding experience. So it makes it a little bit different, not one better than the other. They both have equal amounts of challenges and joys. Laura can go on vacation or be sick and know her horse is okay.
Yes,
On the other
she's
hand,
the only one. Everybody else, everybody on the homestead, not so
on the
much,
other
but
hand, I cannot do it so easily. But I love bringing a horse into our environment, but I'm not naive about it. There are a tremendous amount of things that happen to not only the horse coming into the environment, but for the horses who are already here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because of herd dynamics. And horses thrive in herds and they wilt when they're by themselves. Mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, everything starts wilting when they're alone because their autonomic nervous system is on heightened survival because safety is found in numbers with herd animals. So what I wanted to share with that, and then I'll give it back to Laura for a little bit, is that when I bring a horse into my herd, it disrupts everybody's routine, not just the newcomer. However, the newcomer is the only one who doesn't have a support system other than me, and they don't know me.
Yeah.
So they don't know me enough to trust me, And so many of us humans make the assumption that because I bought you and I love you and I talk sweet to you and I bought all these new things for you and I'm putting you in this really cool place, that you should trust me and know that it's all okay. And my question to you is, if the table was turned, would you trust that individual based on that criteria? I can answer
Uh,
that wholeheartedly. No, I would not. Actually, I would have a little distrust for you. You took me away from my home. And in that home, I had security, I had safety, I had comfort, and I had play. And that is all a horse cares about. You can slice and dice all the fluff away. That's what matters to your horse. If you can meet those four needs, your horse is going to trust you and follow you no matter where you go.
and we didn't even talk about the horse that comes from the not so good situation. In that situation, they don't know that you just saved them. They just know, oh my God, it's going to happen again. And that horse needs time to trust that the situation that you're putting them in is actually going to be a good one. MJ flopped around in a lot of different homes before she got to me because first she was adopted by an elderly man who had some, or I think it was his wife, had some lung problems. And so they could only take care of their horses in the summertime, and in the wintertime, they had to go south. And so the horses would come back to the rescue and then leave and come every year. So that happened for her for about 6 or 7 years. And then she got adopted by the Forest Service and she was going to go be a forestry horse. But she thought their electric fences were funny and kept running away and only lasted for about 72 hours before they decided she was a little more trouble than she was worth and brought her back. But by the time all that turmoil had happened in her life, she was like, yeah, you're going to be here for 5 minutes and then gone. It took her a long time to realize that I was going to keep showing up. And she was very skeptical and just kind of angry. And it was on me to not take that personally, to see the whole picture. And depending on where you get your horse, you might not have that history. You might not know. But you have to adjust your expectations and understand the change that they're undergoing, because if they don't snap to immediately, that doesn't mean that they're not the horse that you thought you were getting. When you go and you see a horse in an environment that they're comfortable in or relatively comfortable in, and somebody's showing that horse off to you, you are seeing the best of that horse. You are seeing them responding to a person who they know, who has figured out how to make them tick, whether that be in ethical, good ways or not. But that person has figured out in their way how to bring out the best in that horse and are showing you that. And in that person's presence, that horse is probably going to act pretty similar for you. But when you take them out of that and bring them home, you cannot expect it to be the same. And that doesn't mean that the horse was necessarily misrepresented. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it means that horse just needs some time. One of the biggest mistakes I see people making is wanting to ride that horse immediately. There was a horse at our barn that I had a particular interest in because she came from a rescue that I care about. And she came to our barn for training and then she got homed. And it had been this like, she was there for about 6 months and we just loved this horse. And I met the owner. We all felt so good about the home. And, I gave the horse a big hug and I told her, you're going off to your great life and I'll see you around. And that's so great. And her mom, who we felt so good about, was taking her up the driveway. And then she turned around and she said, we'll see you at Running Eye tomorrow. Because we were all in this mutual group where we were going 2 hours up the highway to have our horses at an intense obstacle course the next day. And my barn owner and I turned and made eye contact in absolute horror that this person thought it was okay to buy a horse today and put her in that situation tomorrow. And thankfully, it went really well because that horse was incredible. But it could have gone horribly and it would not have been the horse's fault.
One of the things that I tell people all the time to think about, there's anthropomorphizing with horses. Like, oh, he doesn't like me. Oh, he's this, baby, blah, 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 blah. And then there's the the reality of herd dynamics, horse psychology, human dynamics, social dynamics for humans that are very, very parallel. And that's why we get along so well. I am constantly seeing my world through the horse's perspective because my world is so ingrained in the horse's world that I am always seeing it through my eyes, through their eyes. Let's just think about it. We have all relocated in our lives multiple times. Started out from home to kindergarten, from kindergarten to first grade, from sixth grade to middle school, from middle school to high school to college to moving out on our own, to a new job, to a new state, to a new marriage, to a new relationship. Okay. We are constantly relocating our lives. Some of us are very residual that way, resilient, and they crave and thrive off of that. Sounds like this little mare Laura just talked about might have had a little bit of that in her. She was a little resilient. It's like new beginnings, new opportunities, woo-hoo, right? But not all of us do. So when we relocate to a new home, we have to adjust, especially if it's in a new community. We are a fish out of water. We feel we're a foreigner in the habitat that we have chosen to move into. And it's the same for the horses. How long does it take us before we get comfortable? I can honestly tell you, I have uprooted my life and moved to a new community and a new job and a new career and a new life 3 major times in my life. And each time, all I could say to myself was, I can't wait till I've been here for a year. I'm going to know the lay of the land. I'm going to be settled into my home. My horses and I are going to know the environment. I'm going to have new friends. They're going to have new friends. In a year, this is going to be home. And so I ask horse owners to put themselves into that thought. How do you handle change? Because how you handle change is going to directly influence the new horse in your life or the horse you've had for a while that you keep relocating. For whatever reasons, no judgment there. This is just a neutral, matter of fact conversation. That if you keep moving your horse around, do not expect them to behave like they always have in the last place. We have to take them into consideration. Think about when you've watched a new horse be put in with other horses. At very best, it's uncomfortable and it's sad because they're driven off away from everybody. But most of the time, not only are they kicked out of the herd, not even kicked out of the herd, they're not allowed into the herd, but they are ran around. They can't drink, they can't eat, they find a safe spot, and somebody in the herd says, nope, that's not your safe spot, that's my spot. So they're constantly on heightened alert. And then you show up and you want to take them out and put a saddle on them and have them perform like they have always performed or like they performed when you decided that this was going to be your horse. And it's unrealistic. And I practice and I teach in my program, always set yourself and your horse up for success. And that's in everything you do. Yeah. Especially in a move, especially in purchasing a new horse. Don't buy a horse or take your horse that you're relocating or even going to a weekend clinic. Do not pull out of the driveway at 5 p.m. and pull into this new environment in the dark where there's new sounds, there's new sights, there's new smells, there's new horses, and they have left all their security and safety behind. And they don't know what you know about the situation you've just put them in. Don't do it. Yeah. I will not relocate. I will not bring in a new horse. I will not go away for the weekend and arrive at dark. There's
and
Go ahead.
If you find yourself in an unavoidable situation where your horse is arriving at dark, which I have before, because if you're having your horse professionally shipped, that horse is arriving when it's arriving. You are that, it doesn't matter if that horse has never seen you in your life. You are the best thing that horse got. You are that horse's eyes and ears all night. You pull up your lawn chair, you sit there and you hang out with them and you watch them and you talk to them.
And you put them in their own pen.
And you put them in their own pen. Yes, you do not kick them out in a herd. Absolutely not. No.
Put them in their own safe space. I have moved here on the ranch. We have 13 horses, and I try to keep my horses in their little herds that work, but things change sometimes. Like I lose a herd member, or I had my original 4 that we came here with. I had my Mustang mare and her 4-month-old baby. And Gino, who was the oldest, he was in his mid-teens at the time we moved here. He's 25, so he's 15. And then I had RC, who was 9, kind of at the prime, you know. And they had been living together as a unit in Truckee very happily. And so I moved them here. And then I brought in the rest of my wilds, and they all had their own pastures. But this particular herd, called my dream team, 4, lived in the biggest pasture. And they all nestled together. We brought them home in the middle of the day, and they were out in the pasture. At the time, they didn't have a shelter, but they had big bushes of sagebrush. And so when the night fell, I walked their whole parameter with them before we let them loose, so they knew what their boundaries were. I couldn't find them when the sun set and it got dark. So I went down there, and bless their hearts, they had a 4-month-old baby with them that they had all watched be birthed. They had taken him to the heart, the center of the pasture where all the big bushes were, and they literally tucked him into the biggest sagebrush, butt in, and they were all surrounding him,
Oh.
keeping him safe. That's all that mattered to them. Now, Dream was, unwild. She had been tamed and domesticated for less than a year. So she still had that wild in her. So that's one situation. But then it came a time where Gino was being bullied. And I had to take him out of the herd, and Harry came. So Gino raises all my orphan babies. So Gino had a job. Perfect, right? Well, then it came a time that Harry was, because he was bottled fed, he had no horse social etiquette. And he was also what we would call proud cut. And some will say there's no such thing, but I'm here to tell you that there is. And it has to do with the epidural cord not being cut short enough that gives them enough testosterone. But anyway, he was kicking everybody's butt. So I had to put him in with Dreamcatcher to teach him what it's like to be a horse with Dreamcatcher and Perone. It took them 6 months to sort it out and Harry to be accepted into that herd. That was 2 years ago. And now they're all best of buds. But so that's not even a situation of taking him off the property. That was just putting him in a new herd.
Yeah.
So my point, I keep saying my point. I'm sorry, you guys. What I want to share, I think my biggest thing I want to share with all of you, that there's a lot of articles actually being written on this right now. It takes the average horse three months to 12 months to fully settle into a new environment. What I do when I bring a new horse home is I give them 1 solid month with no expectations other than be a part of this herd. This is who I am. I groom you. I feed you. I'm your leader. We play on the ground. I may bring them up in the round pen and ride them. But I have 0 expectations other than this is your new home. This is where your safety, security, comfort, and play can be found.
And this is where you're just feeling each other out. So that if that horse shows you, I'm super cool, calm, and collected, and I'm ready to saddle up and hit the trail, you're going to saddle up and hit the trail. And you're going to let them do that. But the no expectations part is you're going to make dang sure that they're ready before you do that. So we're not saying you can't ride your horse for a month. We're saying you need to allow the space for the potential that you should not.
And we're saying, make setting yourself and your horse up in every situation for success a golden rule, a
Yeah.
priority. You know, Rocky and I were out at the fairground rodeo arenas getting to know each other and riding, and I was teaching lessons, you know, to my clients while I rode him, and we got to know each other shortly after he came here. But it was all from a place of, let me prove to you I am worthy of being your leader, and I will earn your trust. I had no, and Laura, I think you're going to agree with me on this. I see time and time again, and it breaks my heart. I'm being polite. I see it all the time, that people have this expectation of, you should do everything I tell you to do. You should behave like a well-behaved, trained horse that I purchased and paid a lot of money for. And I don't have to earn anything.
Yeah.
You have to give it to me. And you guys, that's called dictatorship.
Yeah. And we're just a little hypersensitive to that right now.
Yes. And you do not, that horse owes you nothing. Nothing. And it's arrogant to think that they do. It's a relationship and it's a partnership. If you're a woman, do you want a man on the first date expecting to be able to kiss you, touch you, fondle you, tell you what to do, order your food? And if you're a man, is it okay for that woman to say, oh, you're paying for dinner and buy me this and I want that and you should take me here. I don't want to go there. No, it's a relationship. A horse is is an opportunity for one of the most, oh my God, you guys, one of the most amazing, heart-filled relationship experience that you will ever have.
And if your heart is in this place that wants that amazing relationship that Cindy just talked about, which if you're listening to this podcast this far in, I think it is, um, you're not thinking about your relationship with your horse in terms of weeks and months.
True.
You're thinking about it in terms of years. I have not seriously ridden my horse in a year. We have toodled around a handful of times. And I'm not worried about that because every time I put her back in her pasture, I say, take good care of your body because I want you to be here 20 years from now. She's 12, so that might be a big ask, but I want you to be here 20 years from now. Like 1 year out of a 20-year relationship, which we would all be lucky to have with our horses. 1 month, it is a drop in the bucket, and it is the most incredible investment in your time to set yourself up successfully.
I feel a little bit like we might have been kind of lectury in this, you guys, and full disclosure, because we're all about being real and messy and honest. And right now is a time in our lives, as well as Minnie's, where we are all on hyper sympathetic, adrenaline driven, fear driven states. And so I personally feel like I might have been a little venti in this, but I want to just share with you that bringing a new horse into your life is amazing and it's magical and it can be wonderful and it can be scary and it can be intimidating and it can be frustrating and it can be confusing, because that's everything that your horse is going through in this new location with this new people and the new routines and the new smells and the sights and the sounds and the new herd. Imagine, you know, like you're used to getting in the trailer and going, and then you come home and you're in your safe space and you have your surrounded herd. Even if you're not in the same enclosure, you still have your same herd, right? And the same sounds, and it's nighttime and somebody nickers, and horses can tell by the sound of a nicker who it is, if they're happy, if they're distressed, if they're curious, if they're just want to know that everybody else is still there with them. And so they get in the trailer and you're excited because they're going to a new home and they're going to be your most amazing horse yet, but they don't know that. And so they get out of the trailer and they're like, oh, wow, this is a new place. And oh, cool, or but it's new and they're checking it out. Well, then day goes on and the night comes on and they're in a new space and they're getting new food and they have new people and they have new sounds and they have new smells and they have new horses and they're missing home.
Yeah. And missing those relationships that they left. They
Yeah.
remember. They remember their whole lives and they grieve relationships that they lost with each other.
And they didn't know they were leaving.
They didn't know. MJ, this will forever be burned into my soul. She knew she was leaving. She kicked and threw her body sideways and did everything she could to upend my trailer and screamed her head off for 5 miles. And I was a mess.
Yeah.
And I knew that the rescue was going under and that I was saving her, and it was still so not okay.
Yeah. So we do the best that we can. And if we think about these things that, in your heart that you're going to give them everything you can and then some, but they don't. So if we just can give them the time that they need, and some need less than a month, and some need up to a year, and everywhere in between. And if you please, just keep in mind that maybe they're still adjusting, which means balance, right? Prove to them that you're worthy of their trust. Prove to them that you're a leader that they can count on. Be compassionate and understanding if some days they're not on their mark, because some days we aren't either.
Mm-hmm. I want to give you some practical tips on the side of bringing that horse home to help you set up for success. The one that people miss so much is the diet change. And that's a really tricky one. If that horse is in a pen eating alone in its home before it leaves and you have time, I prefer to change the diet before the stressor of the move. But that's not always possible if that horse is in a herd, if you're like buying the horse and moving it in 2 days, if your person you're buying it from is just not flexible. The correct way to change a horse's diet is to take 3 weeks and change that diet 25% at a time. Very few people take the time to do it right. And horses have varying degrees of success in getting changed over quickly. So if you can't do it right there, then try to buy enough hay from that person that you're buying the horse from, or at the very least, make sure that you have hay on stock that's the same species of grass and hay while you switch them over. But in that 3 weeks, this is part of the reason why I don't love it, is I'm monitoring carefully for water intake because they have new water. They might not like the taste of their water. You haven't gotten time to train them to drink out of a bucket yet. Monitoring that water intake, taking that diet super slow. If they're gonna test fencing, chances are it's gonna be when they're getting run about by the herd. Are all the T-posts capped? One loose T-post cap can be devastating. I keep a bag of T-post caps in my trailer, so just in case I end up somewhere that's missing a few, I can just fix that. But the diet is the big one, and then have your vet on call before the horse comes, because accidents happen when horses are in fight or flight, and they're more likely to be in fight or flight during transitional periods. I'm not trying to scare you. When you're prepared and you're ready and you're watching, the bad stuff doesn't happen. So be prepared. honor the fact that your horse is going through a huge change. Even when I change MJ's diet correctly and I have my body worker and my energy worker come around, she asks him for support on her stomach meridians. So it's stressful for them even when you do it right. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever looked at your horse and wondered if they're thriving in your care? Is there more you can do to give them the best life possible? Most ranches and boarding facilities are set up for convenience, not horse health, but there's tons you can do to fix your horse's situation if you're willing to get creative. Join Evidence-Based Horsekeeping, my Facebook group where members learn how to improve the mental and physical well-being of their horses. The link is in the show notes.
And if you're going to a new location and you haven't had time to introduce them to that water, you can always get a 5-gallon bucket and add some molasses into it and leave it next to their other water source so they have the opportunity. The other really, really important thing to remember, this isn't just when moving them, but whenever traveling with them, give them hay.
Yeah.
The number one way to prevent ulcers is to give your horse ample access to hay, especially when they're in the trailer and those stomach acids are sloshing back and forth up onto that sensitive stomach lining. And I personally am a firm believer, and this is the vet tech coming out in me, for not only contagious viruses and other illnesses reasons, but for the safety of all horses. I highly recommend when you're relocating your horse or bringing a new horse home, that they're allowed to have their own space, stall and paddock,
Own water source.
small pen. They're allowed to adjust to their new environment in the safety of their own enclosure. So they're not having to defend themselves while they're adjusting to everything else. And from a boarding facility's perspective, you can vaccinate, you want these people to show proof of vaccine and deworming.
Yeah.
But you still want to isolate that horse, meaning no over the fence communicating contact for a minimum of 10 days. Because if they're brewing a respiratory something viral that you can't vaccinate against, they're going to bring it into your facility. And if you isolate that horse properly, you're not only giving that horse the ample time to adjust and lower the risk of ulcers and behavioral issues, but you're also protecting all of the horses that are in your care.
Yeah. And this is really separates the good boarding barns from the bad boarding barns, is the ones that are aware of biosecurity and are set up for it. We have a pen that is completely across the property. The only thing over there is the arena, and that is the quarantine pen. 2 horses live in it happily together normally, but when we need it, they get pulled out and the quarantine pen is available. Then we also have, it's all pasture board, but in the middle of every pasture, there's a pen. So if a horse is coming from a known, a small backyard home where that horse hasn't done a lot of traveling and we know that horse is vaccinated and like their risk of having a disease is very low, they'll go straight into the pen. But if they're professionally shipped, if they've been in a show environment, if they've been in an auction environment, if they've been anywhere where they've been coming in contact with a lot of horses that like just incredibly increases their exposure, they go in the quarantine pen. But then with the pens in the middle of the pastures, anytime somebody needs specialized feed, anytime somebody is hurt or injured or needs to be introduced to that herd, they get pulled out, but their family is still all around them, so they don't have to go through that stress.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so they get to sort it out until it has to be 48 hours of complete peaceful living with the new horse in the pen before they get let out. And sometimes we look at it and we go, oh, by the end of the day, this horse is going to be good. And sometimes it's a week or two. And it's different for every horse. And there has to be the space and the knowledge and the understanding that there isn't a set time period for it to be done well.
Rocky's been here since May 31st, and I kept him up in the training facility where he could see two horses, but not the whole pasture horses. I kept him up there for 3 weeks, basically bonding, he and I. And that quarantine, because he had come from Southern California and he was only at his new owner's place here in Nevada for less than a week. So I quarantined
And he
him.
was shipped with another horse, and there was just all kinds of unknown contact.
And I just wanted to bond with he and I before I put him out with the herd. And then I would put him out with the herd during the day and bring him up to the training facility at night so that I could monitor his eating. Plus, we're windy here and my shelters down there don't have enough room for a new horse and blah, blah, blah. Lots of reasons why. But so that was May, and now we're January. So May, 7, 8 months. And it took little Katniss, my little amazing Mustang mare. It took her about 2.5 months before she was like, can I eat with you? Can I do this? Can I do that? And Dakota, who is the lead mare, and she's a Mustang of the herd, she was brutal. No, you can't drink until I tell you can drink. No, you can't eat. And I put out more piles of hay than I have horses, and they're on an acre pasture, so they have plenty of room for everything. And then Gino, who used to be really good, well, he pushes him around. So everybody immediately established you are on the lower end of the totem pole. And they all drove him off of hay. And Katniss, who Dakota raised, she would not let him anywhere near Katniss for that first 2 months. So 8 months later, Dakota still drives him off of hay. She'll let him stand within 4 feet of her, but not any closer. Whenever I come out, Dakota drives him off. Gino just runs him around like a bully leader, because Gino's not really all that confident, but Rocky's not a fighter. He does not have a confrontational bone in his body, and that might be because he's been trained as a mounted police horse, and they have to get along.
Yeah.
He and Katniss are very, very tight, and he even bosses her around a bit. But we're 8 months into this. He's comfortable here. He's super easygoing, so he's fine up by himself. He gets a little anxious in the morning if I bring him up because of a rainstorm or whatever. He gets anxious in the morning. He wants to go join them. But he's still, in my opinion, he's still not fully been accepted into the herd by the lead mare and then Gino, who wants somebody to boss around. So we have like rules that we can, kind of guidelines, not rules, guidelines we can follow, but we have to take each horse in each situation as they come.
It's about developing your awareness and flowing with what's presented, because we can only control our side of it, and our side of it is the awareness and the setting them up for success. And then their time and their integration is up to them.
Yeah. Ready to unlock true freedom with your horse? Join Unbridled Freedom, our private Facebook group for women on a spiritual journey in horsemanship. We don't fix our horses, we transform ourselves. This is your space to embrace challenges, celebrate victories, and deepen your bond with your horse. If you're ready to lead with wisdom, compassion, and inner peace, join us today. Let's dance with our horses as one. The link is in the show notes below. and recognizing, does your horse seem like they're thriving or just surviving? And
Yeah.
if you feel like your horse is more in survival mode than thriving, you have to step in. You
Yeah.
have to be their voice. You have to be their advocate. If you're noticing your horse has a lot of new wounds on it, bite marks, kick marks, scratch marks, scrapes, you need to, if you're not there, the person caring for them, you need to talk to the caregivers and say, hey, what are you noticing? How, in your opinion, how are they doing? I notice they have a lot of new wounds on them regularly, and I understand some of that's to be expected, but what are you seeing? In your opinion, how do you think they're doing? There's the other approach, like my horse is getting beat up and you need to do something about it. Well, that's not really, I mean, yes, you'll be heard, but I would kind of like ask your caregivers, because that's who you're entrusting your horse to. Like, what are you seeing? I feel like maybe he's getting beat up more than he should.
Yeah.
What can we do about that?
And they might say he's instigating, which is a different management than he's just trying to survive and they're running him off. And
Right.
you got to be ready to own that. I have had the horse at the top and the horse at the bottom, and it's really one is not necessarily easier than the other. Um, yeah. So I know I mean, MJ needs another strong personality in the herd with her to call her broth. Otherwise, she just thinks she needs to micromanage everybody all the time because they don't have confidence. And when they don't have confidence, I don't have confidence. So I'm going to micromanage them all the time. And it's like, she just needs someone, another strong personality to be like, Leah, chill out. And she's like, oh, yeah, chilling out is good.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah,
like,
it's like having kids, right? You
yes,
sometimes your mama bear comes up if your kid's getting picked on,
yeah,
and you hate to hear that your kid's the bully.
really, right. Yes.
And I do, I have all. I
Yeah.
have both and in the middle here.
Yeah. So it's a balancing act, and yeah, it's what's hard is when you are bringing a new horse into a new environment and trying to advocate for them, and there's lots of horsemanship opinions flying, and some of them may be good and some of them may be bad, and that puts you under a lot of stress. And just knowing that it's coming and having those hard conversations beforehand, ask your barn, how do you do a herd introduction? If they go, well, you show up and you back the trailer up and you throw them in, well, I'm gonna say, would you mind if I go to that's gonna be kind of red flag number one is this really a good home for my horse? But I'm gonna say, would you mind if I bring 4 panels in and set up a pen? And then I'm going to be the one to introduce my horse to that herd, but that's something that I have the skills and the know-how to do. And we're probably not going to teach you on a podcast how to do that. But and now it would be a much more, I have never gotten a new horse that one is trained and two was coming into a boarding situation that I was familiar with. So it was like me and my wild ass horse who didn't know the person. And like that's very stressful. Now, if I brought a new horse into our barn, it would still be stressful for me because I have a higher degree of wanting to intervene and do things than is normal at my barn, but so much less stressful than when the boarding environment is new. But it's all just managing those expectations.
One of the biggest things that we really wanted to bring awareness to everybody is the false expectation that you went and you found this horse and it was great and you bonded and you bring them home and it's not the same horse. There's a lot of reasons for that. But if you know going into it that they need an adjustment period that can be anywhere from a month to 12 months. If you go into it knowing that and you have some compassion and understanding. How do I feel when I'm going to a new job, a new home, a new community, a party,
Ew,
somewhere that I don't know
party
anybody?
that I don't know anybody. That's my worst nightmare.
Think about that. And our horses, our horses have the ability, they are telling us stuff all the time if we know how to listen to them.
Yeah.
So just, we want you to know that it is actually not normal when you take a horse into an environment and they are completely okay and ready to get to work 8 hours later when the sun comes up.
Yeah.
That is not a normal
Like unless you and that horse have
experience.
been going to weekend clinics every year for the past 5 years, and that's the thing that you do. Like if you are introducing this new thing, that is not normal.
Right.
Yeah. So really what it is, because there are situations where horses are misrepresented and drugged and all it does happen.
Yeah.
I think it happens less than people think it does. And what that comes down to is, can you see when that horse is in parasympathetic nervous system versus sympathetic nervous system? And are you waiting for them to be operating most of the time comfortable on your property in their parasympathetic nervous system before you ask them to be that horse that you tried out and you purchased? And if not, then it's probably that they're still adjusting.
And there's this thing that we call the honeymoon phase, which is you bring a new horse into your life and into a new environment, and they handle it one of a few different ways. One, they're very introverted and unsure. And so they're maybe a little bit more quiet than they would normally be. And they are a little bit more willing to acquiesce to the environment and to the things that are being expected of them. And that's because they are a fish out of water and they don't know their boundaries yet. And they don't know those that they're engaging with. So they're checking it out and they're being really, really good so as to avoid confrontation and problems. And as they start to adjust and feel better, then you start to see some of their personality coming out. Or you get the horse who comes into this new environment and they're behaving in exactly the opposite way of the horse that you purchased. They're challenging, they're chargy, they're obstinate, they're shut down, they're unruly. That's part of the honeymoon phase. And that's them coming out, the bark is worse than the bite kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
They're going to come out fighting before, they're not going to be the one that gets hurt.
Yep. I'm testing your leadership because
Yeah.
I don't trust you.
Yes. Where are my boundaries?
Yeah.
Both scenarios are, where are my boundaries? Who is my leader? Who is not qualified to keep me safe? Because a herd needs a leader that's going to keep them safe. So that's the honeymoon phase. That's the getting to know each other phase. That's you proving to your horse that you are a leader worthy of being followed and respected and trusted. That's you getting to know them. What are their quirks? What's real and what's I'm not comfortable and I'm not sure. That's the honeymoon phase. And not I have actually never heard of other horse people talking about the honeymoon phase. Where I learned about the honeymoon phase was bringing in parrots into our lives. Because they go through the honeymoon phase and they are very, very sweet. It's just like new relationships, you
You're
know?
just showing the best parts of you.
Yes.
Like, I'm actually crazy, but I'm not going to show you that yet.
Until I feel comfortable
Yes.
and then watch out. So when I
Yeah.
learned about the honeymoon phase, then I started seeing it in all species.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just know, like I've had people say, well, they didn't do that what's wrong? They didn't do that when I first got them. It was a honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
Laura and I are here.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. We have Facebook page, Holistic Horsemanship. You can make comments here. We give you links in the show notes of we both have new and exciting online membership programs where we cover this topic and so much more.
Yeah.
Have our private Facebook groups where you can jump on there and check us out and ask questions. Laura's online membership is free.
Hmm.
So you can get in there and you can talk with her and you can learn from her. Mine has a 7-day trial. You can get on there. You can talk to me. We are here for you for this topic and any topic. So if you have any questions about the topics covered in this episode, send us a message on our Facebook page, Holistic Horsemanship and Husbandry, and we will answer your question in a post on our page. You will be anonymous. We'll just take the question and provide our input, and we want to do it on the post so that we can all learn and grow together, because nobody knows everything. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. We want to remind you that we'll be here every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, following the golden rule. Have a plan, but always be willing to be flexible. Don't forget to connect with us using the links in the show notes below.
If you learned something new today, had an aha, or walked away with a valuable nugget, you can say thanks by leaving us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on.